Hello and welcome back to Tarot Tuesday. I'm Amy the Medium, and today we're going to take a closer look at another deck. This week is John Holland's The Psychic Tarot for the Heart and Oracle deck. Now wait a minute, this is Tarot Tuesday, but I'm doing a profile in an Oracle deck? Well, yes, as you could tell by the name of the deck, it is the Psychic Tarot for the Heart and Oracle deck, a 65 card deck and guidebook. The reason that I really wanted to profile this deck is, one, I absolutely love it, but two, it is based on the tarot itself despite being an Oracle deck. The difference between the two is a tarot deck is built on the traditions of the tarot. It will have the same cards, the same suits, the same meanings across all the decks, no matter what the artwork is. An Oracle deck can be a varying number of cards, can be a varying art styles, different meanings to the cards. It really is up to the author what those cards mean and what they represent. So in this case, what John has done is he's taken that understanding of the tarot and adjusted it slightly to create this deck of his own. So let's dive into the deck and really take a look at the cards themselves. First of all, this is a 65 card deck. We know that the tarot has 72 cards, so his deck actually eliminates some of the cards that you would normally find in the tarot. As I open up the box, first thing that you're going to see in the box is the guidebook. Normally, I would tell you, throw those guidebooks out. You don't need them. You're just going to use the symbolism of the cards. You're going to use the intuition that you've got coming in through your own psychic abilities. But in this case, it's really well written, and he's put so much thought into the cards themselves that I do recommend giving it a read for a couple of different reasons. First of all is his explanation of how he came up with the deck and what his thought process was of how the deck should be used. He also gives examples of different spreads that you can use for the cards, as well as the different meanings of each and every card that is in the deck. But on top of that, he gives tips on how to develop your own intuition, how to develop your own psychic ability, how to work with the cards for your own personal development. So I think that's really valuable and a good reason to read the guidebook in this case. So, really great guidebook. You can see it's thick. It's got all the different meanings of all the cards. He does still break the cards out by major arcana and minor arcana. But beyond the normal suits, in this deck, he's also given us an extra suit. So let's look at the cards themselves. First thing I like to point out is the back of these cards. They are absolutely gorgeous. These cards, because it is called the Psychic Tarot of the Heart, the design, the motif is all hearts. It's green for the heart chakra. This deck is really intended for heartfelt readings, for relationships, for emotions, for getting deep into those things that drive you from a heart space. So I've laid the cards out by their suit. I wanted to show you how he broke the deck out. So first is the very large pile here. This is his major arcana. It is still made up of 22 cards, just like you would find in the tarot. And additionally, the cards themselves are loosely associated with those cards of the traditional Rider-Waite tarot. So we start with card 0, just like in the major arcana of the tarot, which would normally be the Fool. In this case, he's called it Trust, which essentially is sort of the meaning of the Fool if you break it down to one word. Second, which is card number 1, is Manifest. This would be associated to the Magician. Again, that loose parallel. 6 here, which is Love, associated with the Lovers. So on and on the major arcana goes. Like I mentioned, these are associated directly to those of the tarot deck. So setting the major arcana aside, we also have the minor arcana, our 4 suits that you would normally find in the tarot. Now in his case, instead of being wands, cups, swords, pentacles, what he's done is labeled them as spirit, emotions, mental, and physical. Now those definitions loosely tie back to the definitions of our traditional tarot suits. So emotional being tied with cups makes sense. Physical being tied with pentacles makes sense. Where these suits differ is definitely the cards themselves. I'm going to pull out the emotional suit, or what would normally be the cups. So what's different here is, instead of there being 14 cards that go from ace up to 10 and then page, knight, queen, king, we only go up to 9 here. So we've got 1 through 9. Now, just like in the tarot, these cards do represent a progression or a story in and of themselves. You start with 1 or the ace, which is love abounds. If you think back to the Ace of Cups, it's the start of something new, it's abundance, it's emotional well-being. And so these two really have that parallel. The two coming together, if you think to the Two of Cups, that's also about partnerships coming together. And then you see the progression of going from self to other, and eventually getting to the point where everything is working out your way, dreams are coming true. There is some conflict in here, like there always is. There's a need to grow, master, and move on. So you see that in card number 8. But you can see here the imagery on these cards is 100% different than the tarot. And the art itself speaks to a different meaning on some of these cards. Likewise, the cards have a descriptor at the bottom of them that tell you what the meaning of this card should be. So as we look at the 5 here, it says change your focus. Now, if we think back to the 5 of Cups, that's the one that I always say is don't cry over spilled milk, changing your perspective. So the meaning is very similar fundamentally, but if you look at the art here and you look at that simple message of change your focus, there's a very different interpretation that can be made if you use these cards in a reading. You can use the art to your advantage to glean what the meaning is when you're connecting with your client. Now, before I go on to any of the other suits, I want to point out the anomaly of this deck, which I absolutely love. He's included a 5th suit, a sub-major arcana, chakra cards. He's got 7 chakra cards here, and they are exactly as you would imagine. It goes from your root or your base chakra all the way up to your crown chakra, and each one of these cards is representative of that chakra and what that chakra means or what it rules or the energies that are associated with it. So the intention with these is almost to be even more of a punctuation in a reading than the major arcana is. So I always say when you see the major arcana in a reading, you're going to put more weight in those cards than you will the minor. Well, in this deck, if you see the chakra cards in a reading, they're going to have even more weight than the major arcana will, because this is going to tell you which chakra is most involved in this reading, that needs the most attention, that has the most energetic influence on whatever the situation is. So I love that he's thrown these cards in. Like I mentioned, the deck in total is 65 cards, so it is still less than a normal tarot deck. And by adding in this extra suit adds a little bit of extra depth into a reading. So you can see this is a big deck, and it doesn't matter that it's less cards, it's a thicker stack than a tarot deck. I want to show you the other suits before we go into maybe what a sample reading could look like with this deck. All right, so here is the physical, or what you would normally associate to pentacles. Again, he's given the definition to this suit as physical. So this means when this shows up in a reading, it's going to have something to do with your physical output. So in this suit, you see number 1, which would be associated to the ace, all the way up to 9. The meanings on each one of these very similar to what you would find in the tarot. But because the artwork is completely different and he's written a very simple meaning of the cards on them, you can interpret them very differently from the tarot, if it is so fitting. So an example here is the 8. Here you see dedicated effort as the subject of this card. Well, the 8 in the tarot, you see somebody who is hard at work, who is putting in that dedicated effort to improve. This card as well, you see somebody hard at work on a painting, but you see the energy of this here. They're painting a relationship, going back to his purpose for this deck, which is about relationships, the heart, emotions. It is about the physical work, the dedicated effort being put into a relationship. Always remember that when you're working with this deck, it is meant to be very heartfelt. It is meant to be about our emotional state. And so your readings are going to be that way. But likewise, you're going to get a different vibe off the cards than you will off of the traditional Rider-Waite tarot. Next is Spirit, which is associated with the Wands suit. So this is really about the drive, the thing that pushes us forward to see and achieve results for ourselves. And so just like the other suits, we've got 1 through 9. In this case, let's look at the 7. Choose your battles. And it shows an individual with 3 large sculptures. It looks like 3 large heads. Very different art-wise to the Rider-Waite. But again, it's that similar feeling of being in battle or conflict. His message is more about an internal conflict, choosing your battles, versus in the Rider-Waite where you see him up against others. That can also represent an actual physical battle with others in your life. And finally, mental or swords. So you can see here a little bit of a more literal interpretation of the tarot. If you look at card number 5, it says win or lose. There's literally a sword in the artwork. So it helps you to understand that connection here. Swords being about mental state, the mental suit. It's where we find a lot of our own inner conflict. So these cards art-wise have a little bit more conflict in the art themselves. But here I want to go with the 2. Refusing to see. If you look at the 2 of Swords, similar in a way of somebody who's unable to see of their own accord. But the energetic vibe between the 2 is very different. In this deck here, it's more about a personal choice or a personal connection or reason, versus in the tarot, it's far more up for interpretation. Is it an internal choice or is it the external environment? What I love about the art here on this card is he's got that helmet with the third eye, which implies using your own intuition. So the artwork itself is very communicative. I love the fact that the art in this deck is so simple, but you can get so much feeling and emotion and insight from these illustrations and how they are drawn. And I should mention the art on these cards is done by John Matson. So kudos to you, John. I love it. Beautiful. So that's all of the suits. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shuffle up the deck and lay out a sample spread so you can see how these cards can work together. Let's just look at issue, action, outcome. So issue being base chakra. Base chakra being the root is about being grounded, present, here, and releasing what no longer serves. So the action is clarity of belief. I also know because of the color here and the card here, this is loosely associated to the Ace of Swords. So the action being, I need to be clear about my own beliefs. I need to be clear about what I want. I need to make sure that I am moving forward with my own thoughts and ideas and processes around things. And again, this is related to the base chakra, so staying grounded, present, and releasing that which doesn't serve. So this is telling me, be clear about what you believe, what you want, what you need, and let the rest go. Outcome is success and growth. The 8 of Spirit, loosely associated to the 8 of Wands, which is success and growth. So by being clear about what I believe, what I need for myself, releasing that which does not serve, I can see success and growth in my own life. So a really quick way to work with these cards together, to work with the different suits, and remember those chakra cards giving you that little bit of extra flavor. So that is this week's Tarot Tuesday. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you've enjoyed becoming familiar with this deck. I absolutely love it. John also has a second deck as well, and what I really love to do with both of his decks is mix them together. And that's a totally different topic for another day. But I hope you've enjoyed becoming familiar with this one. I look forward to covering other decks for you in the future. Take care and have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.